Welcome to the series of Relational Database Management System. Myself is Fatima Rafiq, Assistant Professor, Abedanamda Senior College, BCA Department. We have started with the concurrency control in the last lecture. We have studied what is log and type of log. Today we will be seeing a starvation of log. It usually happens to a large or with the long transaction. Starvation is a situation where multiple transactions are executing simultaneously. At that time, there may be a situation where one transaction is waiting for a long for the excess of data item, but the data item is not available for it. The how much time it should wait, that situation is called starvation. Like every time the new transaction is coming and it has a data item, excess of data item, but one transaction is actually waiting and waiting. So this situation is called starvation, where the transaction has to wait for a longer period of time to acquire a lock. So this is called starvation of luck. It usually happen when the transaction is very long. We'll understand the starvation of luck by using the example. Here I have, let's consider T2 transaction. T2 transaction has a shared mode lock on the data item. Let's suppose this, we will understand this by using some example. So let's consider I have transaction T1. I'll be taking var. Let's consider I have T1 transaction. This T2 I have T1 transaction, T2 transaction, then T3 transaction and T4 transaction. These are four transactions which is running simultaneously. T2 transaction has a shared lock on the data item, on the particular data item. Let's suppose we have a data item A. We have a data item A. On this particular data item A, this T2 transaction has a lock, and it is a lock which is a type of shared lock. So it has a shared lock, and who has given the shared lock? Transaction T2. T1 requests an exclusive mode of lock on the same data item. Now T1 comes and T1 says that I want the data item A, but this T1 transaction wants which kind of lock? T1 transaction wants the lock exclusive lock. It is requesting the exclusive lock on data item A. But with the by using the compatibility chart, we know that if the transaction is running and the transaction is already having the shared lock, it is compatible with only the shared lock but not the exclusive lock. If we grant the transaction T1 exclusive lock, so it will create a conflict. So we will say T1 transaction to wait for some time. T1 has to wait for T2 to release the shared lock. Meanwhile, consider transaction T3 comes. Transaction T3 requests a shared lock on the same data item A. Again, in the next situation, in next time, transaction T3 comes, and what the transaction T3 wants? T3 wants data item A, but this time it wants the shared lock. So because shared is compatible with the shared lock, will give a grant to the T3 transaction immediately. As T2 and T3 will be compatible, so we will be granting the lock to T3. At this point, consider T2 release the lock, but still T1 has to wait for T3. Now T3 release the lock, so now the current lock which is on data item A is by the transaction T3, and again it is a type of lock which is a shared lock. Then And again, there may be a new transaction T4 requesting a shared lock mode on the same data item. After releasing T2, now the data item is with T3. At the same time, T1 transaction comes and T4 transaction comes, and T4 transaction says that I want the data item A for reading purposes. As we know that shared and shared is compatible. So the T4 transaction is also has a immediately access to the data item A. So because it is compatible, T4 is compatible with T3 because it is a shared lock, and T4 also wants the shared lock. So it is compatible, so that T4 will have a access to the data item A. Now within this situation, if you pay attention, T1 never gets the data item because T1 won the exclusive lock. T1 has to wait. So there is no progression in T1 transaction, and we say that T1 is a starve. How we can avoid this type of situation where the one transaction is becoming a victim of waiting. Another new transaction comes and getting the data item A, but T1 transaction, because it is require exclusive lock, it has to wait for a longer period of time. To avoid the situation, we can use this procedure. If Ti request M lock on Q, then if it is granted if there is no other transaction holding a data item Q in a mode of that conflict with M, if there is no other transaction that is waiting for a lock on Q, and that made its lock request before a Ti. So these are two situation where we can avoid the starvation. Starvation for like starvation. In the starvation, what can we can do, we can implement these two conditions. If we think any of the transaction is getting starved, in this case T1 transaction is getting starved, the T1 transaction has to wait for a longer and longer period, so we can implement these two conditions to avoid this type of situation. So I hope this is clear to you. Here, if you find any difficulty, or if you find any questions, doubt regarding this, you can write in the comment box. Thank you.